Welcome to CMPAC Spotlight, where we put the spotlight on our local talent and producers here at Access 21. Today I have with me here Mrs. Paige Coffey. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. So let's start off like this. Who is Paige Coffey?
That's a really tough question. You think that those are easy questions to answer, but I have a show on Access 21 that airs on Monday, 1 o'clock and 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock p.m., 10 o'clock p.m. every Monday. And my objective is to not focus on Paige Coffey, but to focus on my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that's the main element in my world is less of me, more of him.
Right.
So it's not really about me as much. I'm just a part of the title of the show.
Okay, so what inspired you to do the coffee shop?
My dad passed away in 2006. I'm an only child.
Wow.
And the only way to leave a legacy was to name something after him. And so the coffee logo became the logo for the ministry at one point. This was years ago. And then the coffee shop I started using as an email address. And I thought, what a great name for my show, the Coffee Shop. And so that was a joke as a kid because no one liked coffee when I was young, but now everybody likes coffee. So it's just kind of a running joke that wound up being something that I see as a lifelong legacy for my father.
Very good. Very nice. So how do we come to the coffee shop and Access 21 meeting? How do we get there?
I'm really glad you asked that. Evelyn Pennington had a show on Access 21, I think maybe 15 years or so, every Thursday. And this was just her heart, sharing Jesus here at the station. And as she got older, I met her granddaughter, which was the producer of her show, and she needed help. So she wanted me to come in. At the time, she was not able to come into the studio, so she needed me to come to the house and help her out a little bit, and then she asked me to take over her slot.
Wow.
So the filming began for the coffee shop on Thursday, aired on Thursdays, but the filming began really when Evelyn's show got to the point where she couldn't record each week anymore. I kind of stepped in and helped her out, and then when she passed, I took over that slot as she wished, and then one thing led to another, and so now we had taken a break for a few years, and then Stephanie said, hey, let's pick back up on Access 21, and we got a great rolling episode that we can air every week, so let's do that, and I'll be the producer.
That's wonderful. That's very interesting. So I want to ask this. Word it however you need to. I don't mean to be insensitive in any way, but was there like some sort of vetting process that took place, beforehand for her to say, "It's you. I want you to take over the show"?
Evelyn and I had a very close relationship. She had met me through our ministry connections, and she said that she felt like that's what the Lord had spoken to her, is that I was to take over that spot. And then I was very close to her at the end of her life and was able to pray over her quite a bit. And she said there was no one that she would rather have take that position. And so even though it evolved into a different time slot and we took a break and so forth, I consider Evelyn as kind of the sponsor that led me into this network, this arena. But she and I did share a very special connection, and she said that she felt like it was the Lord.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when you are preparing to do your shows, how do you prepare? How do you prep? What goes into all of that, into whether it may be pre-production, production itself, in the post-production process?
Well, I tell you, I actually trained Stephanie, who is our producer. I helped train her in the type of production and how, because it is different the way that she produced Evelyn's show versus the way that the Coffey Shop would be produced. And the evolution of that was kind of interesting, but she fell right in line. She learned quickly. And the way that we do it today is not the way she did it, before. But we prepare each week by saying, okay, what's the title? What are we focusing on? And then being different from everyone else. That's the goal, as to not just be, another face on television, another person which everyone that shares the gospel to me and really shares it with a big, true heart is needed, but to have that different edge.
Okay. So how would you, in what ways are you different from other shows?
Well, one thing is I do exorcisms.
Okay.
And I do a lot of them.
Wow.
And we very regularly have demons manifest in our church. And that has brought about a lot of publicity in our area. Sometimes I air clips of that, small clips, those that say, hey, share my testimony. I want my testimony. They sign a waiver and they say, share it with the world. So I share it on social media, share it on the broadcast, but usually it's a little clip at the end. So the message will be at the beginning. And I don't, a lot of people aren't used to that. So I'll just share a little clip at the end. But people need to know that it's real. I experienced it myself, and that's what made me a believer, is because I went through it my own self. And then it just started happening. As a matter of fact, Evelyn, the last event that I did with her, we did a revival in Kings Mountain, and at that revival, there was a manifestation, and we took care of it right there. And thankfully, after going through it myself, I knew what to do.
Wow.
So it's a regular thing for me.
Yeah, so that's a regular occurrence on the show.
It is. Well, I wouldn't say, I try not to add a clip each show.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to be the main focus.
That's good.
But for the audience that's tuning in to see that the whole gospel includes Jesus went about doing good and healing those who are oppressed by the devil.
That's good. Yeah.
That was me at one point. I struggled with addiction, battled addiction for years, and the Lord set me free. And it was what came out of me that surprised me, because I didn't believe in that growing up.
I'm glad you mentioned that, not believing in it. So I'm sure there are some people that come across the show and say, and just say, bah humbug, know. So what do you say to the skeptics, if anything at all?
Come to Statesville and watch one for yourself.
Okay.
That's the best thing about being local, is that and I did a radio broadcast before going to television, and I would answer calls that would come in, and during that time it was a bit different, but now with the incorporation of exorcisms, it wasn't my plan. It just happened. It's not something that I have to prove to people.
Right.
It's something that if I get a call, I get calls from all over the world. I do exorcisms all over the world via Zoom and locally, but they find us on a map from a local, from a minister that broadcasts locally. and they will just come and see for themselves. And I've had people that actually go through an exorcism themselves because they came to see if it was real or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a. It shouldn't be amazing. It shouldn't be something that's sensationalized.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It was very normal in Jesus's day.
Mm-hmm.
But today we look at it and we think, "Cool, that's taboo,"
Yeah.
you know. Or we look
Right.
at shows where there's haunted this and haunted that, and there's no such thing.
Right.
It's demonization.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So amazing. We have a clip of yours, of your show. So let's take a break and check that out.
You remove prophecy from Scripture, you might as well not have a Bible. This morning I woke up and I heard this statement after 3 dreams. Everything, follow me, everything flows from prophecy. Everything. Think about it. The Lord spoke and the world came into existence. He spoke, He prophesied.
What constitutes a good show for you? Like like when you walk away, and I know this isn't your run-of-the-mill show. This isn't your regular Access 21 show, like where everything is planned out, or it's very different, obviously. But what constitutes what, in your own words and in the field that you're in, what makes you walk away from the day, from whenever we're pressing record to where we're pressing stop, to say,
To know that I did the best that I possibly could with what I had to work with. So in being in full-time ministry, the objective every day, less of me, more of him, is to make sure that I am a workman, that I've studied, that I have put out what I believe is the truth, and I'm proud of that as, say, the end product, in that it's the gospel and it's the full gospel, and I'm not holding back to entertain the people,
Right.
to in any way get an audience. If I have an audience of 1 or 1 million, I'm going to do the very same thing. So that to me would be the best end result.
Awesome. What is the best part about hosting a show, and what is the worst part?
Those that, even though I believe wholeheartedly in what I do, why I do it, it hurts. It still hurts at the end of the day when you have people that you want to help, they need help. I started out in counseling on air, and they needed help, and you could help them because they would accept counseling. But counseling in this way, not necessarily as easy as just saying, hey, take this advice, do these steps. And the people that really need help, sometimes I have to walk away. And that's the hardest part. But as far as the show is concerned, I love to record, and even if I need to help with the production part, I enjoy that as well. So you say, you usually interview the producers.
Yeah.
I enjoy that part as well. It's kind of like coloring. It's just activity where you really get to show creativity.
Right. Outside of, I know sometimes the exorcisms are like probably like the biggest draw, but outside of that, and outside of Jesus being the biggest draw, what are some of the other topics that you tackle within that?
False prophecy. The fact that we have a lot of divination in the church today. We have a lot of people that are seeking like a daily weather forecast type divination prophecy, and they don't realize it. And I try to point that out in a gentle way, not with a cynical, critical, mocking spirit, and that's what you usually get. I try to be different in that way and point out that it didn't happen back then and it shouldn't happen today. So in ministry, our daily goal is to, yes, show the full gospel, but also point out those things that we are dealing with a major mortal wound in the church today. People don't see it. Now, not all shows on Access 21 are, dealing with ministry and church, but for what I put out, I want to show that there is a major problem that needs to be addressed. And not everyone has the answer. I don't always have the answer, I don't think, but I have a lot of education to back up the things that I say and a lot of experience. I had a visitation with God in 2002, had a experience where I experienced hell, and I saw then that my disbelief in Scripture and disbelief in what I thought was just a good story, it was actually true, and it transformed my life. And so I had an interview on the 700 Club, and from there, it was ministry all the way. I said, Lord, I'll serve you the rest of my life. And so that's why I do this, and it's why I set out every day to say, hey, look, don't focus on the entertainment and the seeker-sensitive part of church, but focus on the real whole gospel. Stay gospel-centric, and you'll be in the right lane and the right vein. And I think that if more people would do that, we would impact not only the culture, but the world in a greater way.
Yeah. I can imagine that you doing the things that you do can take a lot of energy, can take a lot out of you. How do you navigate that? How do you, I don't want to say work-life balance, but how do you balance all of those things out with everything that you have to do as a wife and, as a minister and, as a person who does a show every week is what I'm hearing? Yeah. Like, how do you navigate all of that?
That's a really good question. I'm
going to throw my nose out. I'm like, this took a turn. You didn't tell me this while we were talking.
I teach dance fitness.
Okay.
And I teach hip hop, actually. I teach hip hop fitness, and I've done that for years. I love to dance, and so that's my escape. That's my outlet. People always say, you're like one person here and one person there. I'm like, no, you just don't see that balance.
Right.
And if I don't have that balance, then I get way too far to the right or to the left, and we do need that balance. It's a really good question. Everybody, whether you're in ministry, whether it's your work capacity, you have to have balance in what you do or you're going to burn out. And I started in 2011, and I experienced burnout early on. I learned I have to have that balance.
Right.
So I started teaching dance, and that from there opened a studio and just have let it out on the dance floor.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic, I heard recently, if we could kind of like maybe take a detour real quick. Heard recently, going into just talking about yoga to people and, and understanding that and helping people understand all of that and all that comes with that. People also mentioned dancing and certain things that can, I'll let you use the verbiage that, but all of those things that come along with dancing. What are your thoughts on that? Is there a caution that you want to give?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a great question. Yes. So years ago, I would kind of dance to whatever, especially when it comes to hip hop, right? You got to be real careful. And then I was taken off the dance floor for about 6 years. I had a really bad health issue. And then the music that I danced to had to change. And the Lord said, when you dance as if you're dancing for me, you'll get your studio. So I was taken off the dance floor for a while, and then back on, and now I dance to Christian hip hop. You know, it's the same moves. You have to be very careful because you can invite a demon just by what you're listening to and what you are allowing in your eye gate, your ear gate, and not realizing that, because in the exorcism that I went through personally, I had a demon that had come in through yoga. Well, yoga is a religion, and every posture is a pose to a Hindu god. So people have to know, if that's where you want to worship, then that's fine. But in Christianity, it is demonization, and unfortunately in Christianity, they have allowed this in as a Christian yoga, and there is no such thing.
What do you say to, again, I know we talked about it, but more in depth, how do you kind of like handle being ostracized in many ways because of your views on things that so many people don't seem to have an issue with, or like even in Christendom, they'll feel like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this. So how do you navigate that, having a whole platform, having a whole show, where you're probably talking about a lot of controversial things? How do you go on? How do you continue on?
I try to bring the people on. For example, I had an interview with a young lady that did not believe in what I talked about and the things that I aired. That's just, it's emotion, she said. There's no way that that's real. And I said, well, come in. I said, and honestly, because she is a Christian, I said, and honestly allow me to do an exorcism on you. She practiced yoga. She had all these things she considered white witchcraft. She was all into Harry Potter, all into a lot of the vampire movies. And I said, just honestly sit and let me do an exorcism on you. And about 3 hours later, she was on the floor, writhing like a snake. And she was in belief. Her husband was in tears. And that made her a believer. Right. So even though I'm ostracized, so was Jesus. So was his disciples. So it's nothing new to me.
Amazing. How can we get in touch with you? How can we, where's your show? I mean, obviously it's on Access 21, but again, tell us the times that it's on. Where else can we see it? Where, all of those things.
1 o'clock and 10 o'clock every Monday, 1 o'clock p.m., 10 o'clock p.m. every Monday. And then on Sundays, we broadcast from our church. We try to air cautiously on Access 21, and not overwhelm the audience, because we don't want them. They are not aware of a lot of these things, so we just kind of tiptoe in that area. But what we find, people contact us from the show, and they want to remain anonymous, and can, because we'll keep that, of course, confidential. But that people do reach out, and they say, no, my family doesn't believe, but I want help. So if there is someone out there that's listening to this and they say, oh, this took a turn that I didn't expect, you are more than welcome to contact us. Our website, thecoffeyshop.org, and that's coffee with a Y, so it's COFFEY.org.
Well, Mrs. Coffey, I thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being transparent with us and for lack of a better phrase, letting it all hang out. Thank you so much. From everybody here at Access 21, thank you to all of our volunteers and all of our studio coordinators and James Rossi in the back. We say thank you for watching CMPAC Spotlight. And I like to say good light and good night.